Alrighty. So hey everyone, and for everybody watching the recording, thanks all for joining. This is a session where we really just want to kind of provide a public service to the services that are providing public services to us. So we want to help out the sites that are helping us through the pandemic. So there's a bunch of folks from the web performance industry on this call, and um, I know we've got Matt from Govt.uk, and we'll see if anybody else joins. But um, yeah, I guess let's kind of dive in and see if there's any sites that we can either analyze performance for. If anybody on the call has a need, or if not, we can always just look at sites that we know of that are helping out folks, and then see how they can improve performance. Does anybody have, and sorry to be picking on you, Matt, but does anybody, Matt, have any sites that we could look at?
So we looked at the NHS last week. I think you had a brief look at Gov.uk.
Yeah.
I was interested, was there any new US sites, the US government sites, particularly? The only other one that isn't particularly critical, but one that I know is a little bit flaky on support performance is the NCSC website. So more security rather than the actual.
Is that National Center for State Courts, or are you talking about the court website?
Let's have a look.
Security. It's ncsc.gov.uk.
Yeah, I will enter it in the. Oh, hang on, in the chat. There we go.
Oh, okay.
And this is purely just out of interest, so that we can sort of feed back to the people there. So.
Okay. And I saw that Eamon had also added this to the list as well. So government.fr. Eamon, are you involved with this site? Are you involved with this site?
In fact, it's the government page talking about coronavirus. Maybe there is another website which is dedicated to the pandemic. I think it would be better to analyze some kind of dynamic data visualization dashboards with graphs and so on. They are, in fact, having low web performance.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely look at that one. So I started the web page test for the NCSC to start off, and then we'll take a look at that one next.
I'm looking at NCSC, and most of the payload just seems to be images that probably are not. I'm just guessing are probably not sized very well for the viewport. I have kind of a thinner viewport that I've got with DevTools open. That should be forcing some mobile-sized images, but like I'm seeing like PNGs that are pretty large and a very large JavaScript, like sort of monolithic bundle that probably could benefit from being split up.
Do you want to share your screen? You see what you're saying?
Hang tight. Bad at WebEx. There we go. Hang on. There it is. Okay. All right, everyone's seeing it. I can bump up font size if need be.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Hey. So. Oh, dang it. I totally. Okay. Right here. Looks like it's using a service worker. So I'll pull it out of that, which is kind of cool. But it is a very large bundle. It's like 1.58 megs. I'm pretty sure in Firefox that size is the decompressed size and like the actual content length. That's really large. I got to think that there's a way to like break that up. That's probably for the entire site. Looking at images here, there's like Cyber First Girls 0 JPEG is like 3 megs. Like most of this is images. It probably could benefit from just some image optimization and like proper sizes. In the pipeline. Although I'm just assuming that sizes are a problem. I didn't actually check the markup, but it kind of looks like it is. Yeah, so there's that one right there. It's a really large, like almost 5,000 pixels wide, but it's like being put into like a tenth of that size. Although this is a 5K screen, so really it would need to be like 800 some pixels at that size to be optimal. But I think there's a lot of image optimization opportunities here for sure. That would probably speed some things up, and possibly some lazy loading. Just slapping on native lazy loading could help with that quite a bit.
There's a whole bunch.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So you want to pull up the web page to test waterfall for it because it's
I ran two the first test. It looked like it timed down one of the images, and that I think that may have happened to me when I was loading the page before because it took a really long. It was like a really long delay for rendering the page. But I have another one of them running as well.
load this one, Paul. I ran it from Ireland, but there's one in the chat for you.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was sharing, but let me go ahead.
That is a lot of WAF, some WAF twos. Wow.
There's a bunch of stuff when you there's all the above the fold stuff or the before on load stuff going on. You can see the big images, but then I presume we get down into what the service worker is doing, and the service worker seems to be caching a huge amount of stuff. Now I wonder.
There's a lot of fonts.
It's what are those fonts, and are they for different languages? So as they've tried to recruit non-English speakers, this is the people who look after our cybersecurity as a nation in an advised business. So they are constantly looking for people who are non-native English speakers, whether they're speaking dialects of Arabic or Thai or Vietnamese and other stuff like that.
I did have a theory about because I had a brief look at this as well. Was I think they're using Workbox to generate the service worker. So my theory was they've just they've extracted all of the fonts into a folder, and Workbox is going across it and generating all these includes potentially, but it's certainly something to raise.
It looks like it's just trying to pre-cache everything for every page or something.
There's some background noise.
Oh my God, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can anyone hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you.
Oh my God. All right, that background noise is me. Sorry, that was the news.
No worries.
There's the JavaScript, there's the images that need sorting, and then there's what the hell is the service worker. There's also the interesting one in request 10 where whatever's input to .json takes a long time to generate.
Right.
Whether it's critical or not, we can't tell at this point. But I've got a 2-second time to first byte on it.
Right. Take a look at the other one that I ran as well. For some reason, it's timing out in the U.S. Which there's always like one image that seems to be timing out in the U.S. because I ran 2 tests and the same thing happened. Your footer.json, this one, this loaded very quickly for me both times. So that may have just been fluke. Did you run this multiple runs? Just a single run. I'm gonna rerun your test for my one as well.
I did just one. Yeah, I normally do London, but London's got a queue at the moment.
Okay. Image sizes are definitely excessive. So that I think that's definitely some low-hanging fruit that they could do to improve that. It's weird. It looks like they're preloading some fonts, but then loading like every font here.
Does Workbox use like wildcard patterns for caching stuff? Because somebody just throws on every WAF 2 might be a project. That down the pipe.
Yeah, that would be my guess. It's just looking at a particular folder, and it's just including a whole folder.
It's also pretty intriguing that the images are pushing out the load time this way.
Probably sapping bandwidth
It's
for
really
other reasons.
intriguing.
Sorry.
Clarify what you mean, Paul.
Oh no, it just the like when I was looking at all the tests, like the image load was instead of the image like the image was requested and it should be a low priority resource, which it is loading as a low priority, but it also pushed out the and I guess because it was in the HTML and it wasn't triggered by JavaScript, that it was that it's pushing out the onload.
Yeah.
Like on every one of these, on all four of our tests, we're seeing the same behavior where the images are at what's actually dominating the page load time. Image compression here would actually help. There's no third parties. This load time is really just images.
In terms of third parties, they're using Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics. I can see here.
There's one here that's coming from S3. What is that? Yeah, that's weird. The fab icon is actually coming from. Using a fab icon from S3. Anybody else have any? Sorry?
Yeah, we could maybe load the main JavaScript file in asynchronous way because it's delaying the loading of the content.
Okay. Oh, you're talking about the main JavaScript over here?
Yeah, this one.
Just point of clarification. So on the main JavaScript line where we have like after it is loaded and there's like the pink that execution time or execution of that JavaScript. What is that?
So
on that line for main.js, or it is loaded, there's like these sort of like pink blips on that line. Is that execution related to that file?
yeah, that's JavaScript.
Okay.
That's how web page test illustrates the execution.
Awesome. I was wondering about that.
Is it the total time of downloading plus parsing? No.
This is downloading, and then this is the JavaScript execution, whether it's parsing, evaluating, executing. To kind of go deeper into that, you'd need to go and do a profile to trace it.
Or I could have just looked at the legend and it would have told me that. Whoops.
Interesting bit further down, where the file's loaded again by the service worker by the looks of things, but the execution of the initial load is attribute to that file as well. So you get loads of pink bars before the file's loaded.
Okay.
Number like 53.
Line 53. Okay.
So the
And I think what that is the so the main JavaScript was loaded twice. It was loaded a second time because the service worker loaded it.
Yeah, it's just replicating it down.
Yeah, this is just a UI artifact. Like it's basically saying that this same file had this this execution path. So it didn't really do any execution afterwards when the service worker loaded it. It's interesting that the service worker didn't retrieve it from the browser cache because that actually went out to network.
Cache storage and the browser cache are two different things, correct?
The service worker storage and the browser cache are two separate things, I believe. Yeah.
So I wonder. I don't know.
If the service worker, like, is the service worker directly going out to network, or is the service worker checking to see if something's in the browser cache before it goes out to network?
That would depend on how the service worker was written.
Looking at the bundle, a bunch of things like there's some base 64 encoded ping images in there,
Wow.
which isn't uncommon with these sorts of situations. And it's using CSS and JS, so there's styles and that buried in it as well.
Are you seeing that in the HTML?
It's in the bundle of the CSS. Sorry, in the JS bundle, if you look in there, I'm not quite sure what bundle they're using.
Main JS was the large one, so
it doesn't have the normal Webpack functions that allow you to identify it as Webpack. So I'm not quite sure, but yeah, there's JS, and it doesn't look very componentized.
The roll-up generated, it looks pretty clean when I looked at it. Rollup tends to not inject a lot of its own stuff.
But yeah, there's quite a few base 64 encoded images in it that are reasonably large.
If it is rollup, they might be using rollup plugin image, which will inline. There is a rollup plugin image min plugin for rollup that'll pull those out.
Notice the content security policy headers are pretty huge. Yes, it's on H2, so that may not be a massive deal anyway.
So yeah, let's see how big this header is.
They seem to be being sent on pretty much every file as well.
This is 1100 bytes.
I think part of the problem of them being sent with every request is the fact that most web servers are shockingly bad at serving different headers for different MIME types.
Wow, a lot.
And it's using CloudFront by the look of it. In terms of prioritization. They're using CloudFront for CDN for H2 prioritization.
Okay. Looks like they are using HSTS. We talked about that in the last session.
It looks like they're preloading, but they might, I don't know if they're in the preload list. Probably are if they've done include subdomains and preload.
Anybody else have anything on this one, or do we want to move on to the French government one?
I think there's
S3 is not a CDN, basically.
Sorry?
S3 is not a CDN. You can have a website. Why put your content on S3? Put it on your own domain and simplify your.
I'm surprised at the fav icon. Let's take a look at
Yes.
Why was that fav icon referenced?
There will be a link in the head. Yeah, it's in the head. It's about first link element. It references it, the file icon straight off AWS.
Is that Andy into? Okay.
Sorry, there you go. Yeah. That's probably that's probably something that just got left in from a developer build, I'm guessing. let's take a look at the French government one. See how long the queue is in these two. They're like important. Anybody else on the call have any other sites that you want to look at after this?
I posted a few Gov sites like the New York State one. I may have posted the Jersey one. I'll double check, but I filled out the form with a bunch of.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I can see.
I don't know if you can see it. I'll be more than happy to go back to messages. And where am I here? Okay.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
I mentioned the WHO website as well in the chat. WHO.
So I went out on Twitter and actually, I don't know if you guys can hear me. It might. No, here we go. Hold on. Maybe what I'll do is I'll kill my camera. Save some bandwidth. Cool. Yeah. So I basically I went off and sort of like collected. Asked Twitter to sort of direct us to some government sites, simply because. And I posted specifically some of the hotspots. And when I say hotspots, like countries that have like about 10% death rates. Which are actually pretty interesting. Obviously, we did the UK last week, but like the Netherlands, shockingly, they're up there. I think Sweden's got this bizarrely high rate of death as well up there. So I've basically asked for some people to sort of hopefully ping us with their sites. But I think even within the US, because every state is on their own now, to check out some of their state sites and see what they're saying. So I pulled up Louisiana, DC, obviously New York, Jersey. I'm looking at Pennsylvania right now because Philadelphia is apparently coming up on the map in terms of cases, and I'll go find Michigan.
Yeah, I have the sites that you had posted over here. So the COVID New Jersey one, the Louisiana one. It's interesting that that's not redirecting page.
In terms of the French website, they're using HTTP 1.1, and it looks to be a ton of separate CSS files as well.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of CSS. Some of these are really, really tiny, like less than a kilobyte.
Yeah, that's the thing about some of these sites. They're pretty sparse, and but a few out there look kind of interesting to dig through.
Also, the JavaScript files are not magnified. Not huge, but
Tests that ran here. In all three of the tests, there's an object down here that took a really long time. And that was encapsulated resource. This was like the bot mitigation.
There seem quite a few files I'm looking at as well, which have headers of no cache control, no cache.
I'm not seeing. We go to the performance review tab. We should be able to see all the. Yeah. Wow. There's no max age or expired headers on any of these.
Also, the images are not lazy loaded.
Lighthouse has to say about this one. Yeah, Lighthouse pointed out lazy loading is one of the ones at the top of the list as well. Good one. Their fonts are loading late after the CSS is parsed, and they could preload the fonts. They could benefit from that. But they could use like font display swap.
Yeah. There are 5 fonts.
More of an accessibility warning about there's something like 13 images without any alt text.
Sorry?
More of an accessibility 13 images without alt text. Now, they may not be needed, but worth flagging just in case.
Okay.
Also, Lighthouse is saying that we have 4,000 elements in the DOM.
Okay. 4,056 total DOM elements. Lighthouse also flagged the caching one as well.
That is using an old version of jQuery 7.2.
Okay. Anybody else have any more on this one?
When you look at the view source on the homepage, they import rule for a lot of their CSS as well, for all the CSS they're pulling in.
Oh wow, yeah. Doing all the CSS imports rather than just loading them as scripts. Anybody else have anything more on this one? All right, let's take a look at New York.
You have your mass ready for the weekend, Paul?
My mask ready for the weekend?
Yeah, I got your message last.
Yeah, in New Jersey, you're now required to have masks to go food shopping. It's fairly lightweight, only 65 resources. They're still using HTTP 1.1. This is mostly dominated by fonts. A lot of fonts on this page.
Oh, wow. All right, I'm loading mine up. See what I can tell here.
Any CSS blocking resources?
What's interesting is they're also loading the same font on two domains. So they're loading the font on coronavirus.health.newyork.gov, but then they're also loading the same icon moon font with a different query string from staticassets.newyork.gov. Seems to be slightly different, so maybe they are two completely different fonts. It's confusing the way that they've named them.
That's a lot of fonts.
What's super interesting here is that you can see there's ones that are named differently. Like over here you've got Proxima Nova regular, but then Proxima Nova regular web font.
Hmm.
What's the difference? One of them is loaded by the global nav bundle, and the other one's loaded on the homepage.
Yeah, so one's going to be loaded by the CSS, isn't it? And one's going to be triggered by something that's in the script.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's both WAFs and WAF2s. Like the font strategy here could benefit from consolidation for sure. Most of the time, it depends on what range of users they need to have, to present this experience to in a consistent way. But most of the time, you only need WAF2 and just throw in WAF if you got to support IE11.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing EOTs and stuff in there too. Wow.
No caching strategy.
No caching strategy. Is that what you said?
Mm.
It's 1 hour TTL. CSS on JavaScript.
For the JavaScript? Next age, something slightly better than that. 14 days. So there's a 2-week TTL on a lot of assets. Like the fonts have this going on too. That could probably be quite a bit extended by quite a bit, but Andy may have different thoughts. Per last week.
They do appear to be versioning their assets. So
they could just put immutable on there, but I don't know what the support for immutable is. Like I haven't checked recently.
So last I checked, it was Firefox. I think that there were signals from Safari.
Safari supports.
Supports it now.
Yeah, which is good because for iOS that would be huge.
Right, that's a fair chunk of the web.
Yeah.
We're busy arguing that their heuristic caching is good enough, but there are tickets in the Chrome bug tracker to say that this is a standard, we should support it.
So, what are your thoughts? And this might be kind of going the other way or on a tangent, but what are your thoughts on immutable, Andy?
It's not going to change, use it.
Right. I agree.
Take a look at the World Health Organization. This is loaded from Dulles. Very image.
They're going to need all the help they can get.
Go back to the cache thing, Jeremy. I think my view is that we believe caching on the browser is far more effective than it actually is.
Session-based caching.
When it comes to customers, I work on the basis that we are caching for the duration of the session, and the next time somebody comes back, they will have no resources from this site in their cache.
I did some analysis a while ago with Mpulse data, And there was, I'll have to run it again. I'll share the results, but there was definitely a distribution of users that had a full, like that loaded a majority of resources from cache versus loaded nothing from cache. And it wasn't. There's still, I think there's still like a large number of cached resources being loaded from web browser from within web browser cache. So I would say that the browser cache is still doing its job, but whether it's keeping something in cache for a year is probably unlikely.
So my question on that would be: is how far apart were those visits?
Right.
Which I don't know whether you can come. So is it somebody doing a session today and they're shopping? So they do a bunch of pay. You got people who have 5 or 6 sessions, in which, let's call it 5, in which case we probably expect to see caching 80% of the time, roughly, for lots of assets. Or is it people who are coming back to that site, once every couple of days? Are those sorts of people having anything useful in their cache?
Right. Yeah, that's a detail that I would not be able to add to that type of analysis because we just don't cross session.
Going back to the main view, the web page test for the WHO website, yeah, there's a huge DOM content loaded there. So I wonder if there's something in jQuery document ready, some sort of weird JavaScript going on there. You can huge there. You can see it there. That's where it's executing actually.
Yeah, very large amount of time being spent in the script AXD. What we could do is we could go and profile that. Not long for me here. This view only shows you when DOM content loader was off. I wonder if download the timeline is. You used to be able to import this into DevTools and be able to do the analysis.
You mean the timeline from?
So timeline for this, like the timeline for this load. Because if I want to see what was actually going on at that 2-second mark, I've now loaded that into. So I downloaded the JSON for that, and I've loaded that in here. Now it's just a matter of figuring out where. So it looks like that.
So web page test doesn't grab the full JavaScript stacks, doesn't?
Yeah, it looks like it's not 100% sure. It used to have a lot more detail in it than. Browser main thread, so yeah, it's not capturing that. So our best option would be to do the profile. I'm actually going to go and do this. So, clear everything from my list sites. Is disable cache. And
I'm seeing a pretty ginormous image on the homepage, 1.6 meg, and I don't think it has any cache control on it either.
Is this World Health? I don't see it.
Content loaded event fired here. It looks like the HTML. There's a very long HTML parse that's happening before the DOM content loaded. I would bet that this is this here is what we're seeing over here. That happened after the largest contentful paint as well. Content loaded.
It takes a second.
There we go. So it's scripted. So it is in here, and it is 200 something milliseconds of execution time.
So one of the interesting things is this is a .NET site. You can see from scriptresource.axt. .NET does this funny thing. So scriptresource.axt is actually a DLL that contains what are they called? Static assets within it. Because it's essentially a dynamic response, it gets compressed at a different level of compression to if it had been a static resource actually on disk.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So IIS compresses differently depending on whether it's a dynamic response or a static response. So dynamic responses get a lower level of compression, whereas static ones get a higher level of compression and then get cached locally on the server. So then the second person along to make the request gets the pre-compressed version. When you bundle those static resources in a DLL, then they're treated as dynamic, so they get a lower compression ratio.
Okay. It looked like that. It looked like that got a compression level 6 applied to that.
Oh my God.
Sorry?
No, sorry. I was just thinking of something else.
Okay.
You wouldn't know what was going on.
Sorry?
Look at what's going on with DOM content loaded. There's lots of styles being recalculated and invalidated.
Where are you seeing that? Do you want to share?
Yeah, let me just share my screen. Please. So you can now see Safari DevTools in your what you begin to see is there's lots of layout being invalidated and the styles probably as part of what's loaded. I haven't dug it deeper.
Is that because CSS and JS might not? I don't know. I'm just spitballing. Like some of that stuff doesn't evaluate for components until after DOM content loaded.
Yeah, but is this CSS and JS or is this?
I don't know. Maybe it's yeah.
I'd be very impressed if I heard that WHO was using CSS and JS.
Oh yeah, fair.
That's well, Jake.
Oh yeah.
What's this one? Query migrate. Well, there's something they could do. The query out and use the new ones, and then we can get rid of Jake. We get rid of this subset request altogether.
Yeah, most jQuery stuff is pretty easy to refactor to modern platform code now.
I think see which ones in here they're actually looking for.
In terms of third parties, I can see them pulling in 3 versions of add this. I don't know why there's 3 versions, but for some reason there is.
I'd say they should not use add this at all and use simple links with direct to the sharing social networks themselves. Using add this because add this just loads of scripts that you don't actually need.
I think Add This had some privacy concerns too. It's not really the best. Every time I see it, it reminds me of like every WordPress site I've ever done troubleshooting for.
Look at Add This here. It's 112k of JavaScript.
Just to share something.
Just to share something, yeah. I don't even know where their share buttons are.
I can imagine they'll be pulling in a load of CSS as well for those share buttons as well, won't they?
These along the bottom.
That could at least be deferred since it's in the bottom.
So they're in the bottom. I wouldn't just use simple
And the footer.
simple links and get rid of all this crap. I don't have a very good opinion about Add This, by the way.
I think you could be forgiven for that very accurate opinion.
Has anyone found the photo of Lady Gaga yet? Because she's in there. I just thought I'd throw that in.
Yes.
I get the feeling they're actually loading a bunch of mobile and desktop assets in terms of images, because I'm seeing like duplicates, but of all different sizes.
Yeah.
Actually, triplicates in some cases.
Yeah, the state of the world's nursing image.
Yeah,
It starts at the top. If you look, this is the. I don't know whether it's because I haven't got whether caching's disabled is doing this, but I seem to have the logo twice now. Whether that was 2 real requests for the logo or whether it was just because caching was turned off, I don't know.
Speaking of caching, I'm seeing a bunch of like.
I see 2 requests for a logo on in Chrome as well. I see actually I also have this caching disabled. Let me.
I'm just specifically looking at the coronavirus disease page of theirs, and it's pulling down almost 5 meg to load the page, and then it's about 14 meg uncompressed of actual resources. So that's a pretty huge page in itself.
Well, the homepage is nearly 9 megs. Nope, they do request the image twice because I've turned.
Age of valid header? I don't think I've ever really seen that.
Yeah, age of the
Watch
header.
these requests.
It's in the RC.
This one.
There's the logo again.
Just in case you didn't know.
Sorry.
Something very wrong here.
Oh, wow.
This one appears. Well, it's 3 sizes. So this one, no, not that one. So there's a 1366 sized version of this person as well. So there's a 1920 wide. 1366. Yeah, so there's a 549 of that person. We've got a 1224 wide and a 479. So there's something very broken with their image loading strategy.
And I don't even know if they're actually even showing up on that page. So it could just be loading without actually being displayed. On top of that, I saw like some caching for like 31 days. Like there are a lot of those, and a bunch of caching for 90 days. And I'm trying to figure out what that was for either.
There's something called Kendo. I've never heard of it. It looks like a third-party script on the coronavirus page anyway, which is 1.3 meg of JavaScript coming down a single file from a third party.
See that Kendo Allman.
And it looks to be it's a JavaScript UI library by the look of it. I've never heard of it myself.
I've given somebody else the screen back a minute while I.
Oh.
It's on .com. UI. UI made easy. It's TELERIK.com.
Wow.
Just looking at.
That Corona page is a hefty one indeed.
So this is the page we were just looking at with the kendo all.min. So that resource is loaded from kendo.cdn.telerik.com. Like it's being served from CloudFront. And it is compressed, which is good.
Kendo is Telerik's one of Telerik's front end frameworks.
Yeah, I'd never heard of the product, but it looks like this is the.
I've only ever used Kendo at like organizations, like financial institutions, and that type of thing. It's almost never come up in any other situation. So, I'm not sure why that is the case, at least in my experience.
So, I think that
Interesting that Kendo is setting a cache control public, but there's no max age. But the age is quite old on this. This was last modified. Actually, the age header doesn't really match up with the last modified header.
There's multiple cache control headers.
Multiple ones.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's interesting.
Oh, can you do more than one cache control header? That doesn't seem like proper syntax to me.
I think that it's going to really depend on the
CDN.
on the browser, really. But according to Redbot, it's cacheable, but it's possible that that both cache control headers get picked up. But I don't know. That's something that we need to test.
Public is the default.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, public is rarely necessary because it's just assumed public. Let's just say private.
what's going on with this multiple image requests on the home page is they're setting a background image on some divs using one version of the image, and then they're using something else. They're using a data image attribute with a different version of the image.
Do you want to share? I'm not sure exactly what you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm just find the source. What we had. If you look here in this div here, there is a background URL specified for the 549v version.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this data image here is the 2.4 version.
Oh, so it's loading. So it's loading two images, two different images. That's the same.
Mm-hmm. The weird thing is somewhere further up, they are actually using responsive images.
Yeah.
So it's just as if responsive images haven't finished being implemented for whatever reason.
Right.
I've commented.
It looks like they're also trying to use a lazy loading for their images. I can see a class of lazy on some of their images as well. but it's not the native image laser loading.
There is also 2 YouTube embedded videos that we could maybe native lazy load with the lazy attribute, because the base JavaScript file of YouTube is heavy.
One thing with YouTube is use Paul Irish's YouTube web component that will lazy load it.
That question?
No, it's what I would do with it. I'd use Paul Irish's or CSS Tricks has an article that shows you how to lazy load the whole YouTube thing and just wait for somebody to interact.
Okay.
Play button before the 600K of JavaScript gets loaded.
By modifying the DOM.
Sorry, will it modify the DOM?
For differing the YouTube videos. Because adding the lazy attribute on the iframe of the embedded videos won't be sufficient to differ. Yeah.
So the lazy load attribute on iframes is woefully underspecified at the moment. Apparently, its behavior isn't clear, and I read somewhere that you shouldn't actually use it at the moment. But there's both. I'll see if I can find it on CSS Tricks. There's an article about how to lazy load
Downloading
YouTube itself. So you basically put a poster image up. You put you have a button and a script. When somebody interacts, presses the play, it goes and loads the player behind the scenes. Paul Irish also wrote a component to go do it. This I'll put the in chat. I've just actually used this with a client to stop 600K of JavaScript being loaded on the videos. It only loads it when they press play, but my argument should be that's what the YouTube player should do by default. If you embed a video via the iframe, it should lazy load. You know, it should wait for you to push the button.
Maybe some intersection observer implementation, but it's not native.
Even need it's the fact that, you know, what we don't know is how many people actually go and push the button on these. How many people actually play the YouTube video?
That's a really good optimization, and it looks like you said, it's that 600K of JavaScript, so it's not insignificant.
It's 7 o'clock, gentlemen. I'm going to go for my tea now.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining. This is fun. I'll post the video on YouTube, and we'll see if there's enough interest to do another one of these.
Keep doing them.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Pleasure to see you all.
Thanks, everyone.
London Web Performance, Tuesday night.
So you're presenting on Tuesday night?
Web Performance, Tuesday night. Matt is presenting.
Matt's presenting. Awesome.
It's
Web migration.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
You can just turn up on the night.
It'll be about 20-minute chat. So if you stick a pizza in the oven midway through, your pizza will be ready at the end of my talk. So
About pizza.
Nice.
Cheers, man. Have a good one.
All right, gentlemen. Cheers. Take care.
Bye-bye.